Survivors and victims have a range of decisions to make in the aftermath of sexual violence. This can be challenging for survivors as they work through the different options available to them. There is no right or wrong decision when it comes to deciding what to do after experiencing sexual violence. A sexual assault response team, or SART, is one of the options available to survivors. It is also a time-sensitive option, available up to 5 days following an assault. A survivor of sexual violence can activate SART through a number of ways. They can go directly to an emergency room or the police station, or they can call the state hotline or their local county-based sexual violence program to find out what options are available, including SART activation. Members of SART are people with special training to support victims and survivors of sexual violence. While SART is a time-sensitive option, victims and survivors have a right to choose their healing journey, whenever they are ready and however they choose to engage in it. Survivors must meet the eligibility requirements for SART to be activated. They must be 13 years of age or older, have experienced the sexually violent act within 5 days, and they must consent to SART being activated. SART has 3 components. The survivor can choose which component they'd like to have contact with and may interact with any combination of SART members. Once activated, SART members are required to respond within 1 hour. SART members include a forensic nurse examiner, law enforcement, and a confidential sexual violence advocate. First, let's talk a little about the confidential sexual violence advocate. For short, we'll call them the advocate. Advocates from a rape crisis center, or what we call sexual violence service programs, are trained to support survivors, which can include responding to hospitals or police stations as part of a SART activation. They also support the 24-hour hotline, which is available through the county-based sexual violence service program. Let's take a look at the advocate's responsibilities. Advocates ensure the victim or survivor is informed of resources and options available to them. Advocates provide a safe, neutral, and confidential place for survivors to explore their options. If the advocate meets with the survivor at the hospital or police station, the advocate will ensure there is a safe, confidential, and neutral location for the survivor and advocate to speak privately. Confidentiality is the foundation of safe and effective advocacy. Advocates keep all information survivors share with them confidential, and they do not share this information with any other member of SART. Advocates also have privileged communication, which means survivors have a safe place they can go to discuss all the options ahead of them and process their experience without concern of this information being shared with anyone else. Victims and survivors must be informed that an advocate is available before statements are taken or medical exams are conducted. Survivors must consent to see an advocate in order for the advocate to be activated. Once the advocate arrives, they will explain their role to the survivor. Survivors have the right to speak privately and confidentially with the advocate before and after any forensic exams or interviews. The advocate may be present during the medical exam and police interviews if the survivor consents. If a survivor requests an advocate's presence during the medical exam or interview, the advocate is there only to provide emotional support to the survivor. Now let's talk about the role of law enforcement. Law enforcement professionals also have specific tasks. The police are responsible for the survivor's immediate safety and security needs. They will explain their role as a part of SART, and they collect basic information about the survivor and the incident. If they are the first contact, they will explain what SART is to the survivor and their right to a medical exam and an advocate. Police need to honor privileged communication between the survivor and the advocate. If the survivor wants a medical exam, the police may accompany them with the survivor's consent and stay with them until the rest of the team arrives. Law enforcement will provide the survivor an opportunity to speak with the advocate alone. Finally, let's talk about the forensic nurse examiner. Forensic nurses have many duties and responsibilities. Forensic nurses must obtain consent from the victim or survivor before providing any services. Survivors have the right to withdraw consent at any point during the exam, and only the survivor can give consent for an exam to be conducted. Once the exam begins, the forensic nurse examiner will start by obtaining consent and completing a review of the survivor's medical history. After obtaining consent, there are many steps to the medical exam. It's important to note that survivors can consent to the whole or only parts of the exam and can withdraw consent at any time. Medical exams can be difficult for a victim or survivor because of the invasive and personal nature. Forensic nurses are highly trained in meeting the specific medical needs of victims of sexual assault and providing trauma-informed medical care. There are a few circumstances that require additional considerations, such as survivors with disabilities and child or adolescent survivors. Working with a victim or survivor with a disability can present unique challenges in obtaining consent for forensic medical exams. Only survivors can provide consent for a medical exam, even if another person has legal guardianship of a survivor. Hospitals have resources available to ensure survivors with disabilities are able to provide informed consent if they wish to obtain a medical exam. Additionally, hospitals have policies in place to assist with the topic of consent. If the survivor is under 18 years of age, every county has protocols for providing medical forensic evaluations to minors and adolescents. For more information, please contact your county-based sexual violence service program. Please note that if someone under the age of 18 has been assaulted by a caregiver, guardian, or another person in position of power, the Office of Child Protection and Permanency must be contacted. Forensic nurses provide survivors with follow-up medical care after the examination. This may include information on medications, sexually transmitted infections, pregnancy prevention and emergency contraceptives, and other relevant discharge information. Survivors will also receive information from any other SART members they chose to engage with. The resources may include information about the county-based sexual violence service program and/or contact information for law enforcement. The survivor may need transportation home or to a safe place of their choice. Advocates can help the survivor explore available options. Survivors who choose not to report to law enforcement can have their kit held for up to 5 years. This allows survivors time to decide whether or not they would like to move forward with an investigation. For victims or survivors who are minors, the 5-year holding time period begins when they turn 18. Confidential sexual violence advocates are available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. To learn more about SART or available options, an advocate can be reached through our statewide hotline, 1-800-601-7200, 1-800-601-7200. Survivors have the right to choose the option that is best for them. New Jersey advocates are here to support you along the way.